Okay, this is a very quick one today, and this is just, well, it's just on this, right? I mean, firstly, to begin with, I'm going to take this on good faith. In posting this, as I did on Twitter, I'm not necessarily stating that the golden one is some sort of conduit for Russian propaganda. I just think it's a fell for it again fucking award, to be honest with you. It's just like they get the briefest glimpse of ankle, and they're like, oh my God, this is what we need, yeah! And you're like, come on, maybe kick the tires a bit. Maybe do a quick fucking search. Maybe look into it a little bit more. And when you do with this guy, Milan Mazuruik, if that's how you pronounce his name, you see all the patterns. Just like spurging out against Russian sanctions, spurging out against the war, funding the war. Just the typical narrative stuff, the typical disinformation. He's not coming out and being explicitly like, pro-Russian. Putin's a great guy, because these sort of figures, they don't really get anywhere. So in order to play the game, they've got to sort of do the concern trolling and everything. But it's all anti-sanctions and pro-Russian political framing. Like his party had a slogan, where is it here? For cooperation with Russia against the sanctions. And he talks about how the sanctions are like bleeding European people. This is like fucking Morgoth, basically. Well, the children cry in the cold because inflation's taken the electricity bill up 10%. Oh, the old people die a slow, coughing death. Like, you know what I mean? It's not as bad as Morgoth. It's not as transparent as Morgoth. But it is what it is. I mean, like, is it all you need? Some guy to say white lives matter in a speech and then go, yeah, this is what we need, get it, man. Like, are you that fucking retarded? Are you that easy to manipulate? You know what I mean? And sadly, I kind of think the answer probably is yes. I did notice as well, just tie this in, just be very brief, this one. Paul Golding is getting behind Restore. Now, he can get behind it, but is he getting involved in it? This is the question, and this is the canary in the coal mine. Because as I said previously, well, I think it was just in a tweet or something, but Restore Britain, like, they need to have the most brutal press officer. That's probably their key position. They want to get the... Because otherwise, just the weight of these grifters and just maladjusted, toxic, mud child-like... Some of these are organic mud children, as it were. Others, of intelligence agency creation. They just need to be brutal in just saying no to people. No, thanks very much for your support. You're welcome to join the party, but we don't think we want you anywhere near. Like, you're not getting a meeting. No, you're not getting on board. If Paul Golding gets him on board in any way, shape, or form, that's it. Because Paul Golding is such a transparent... I mean, he's such an idiot. It's so low IQ. This is like Daily Mirror fucking Russian propagandists, isn't it? And just grift and just awful. Oh my God. How could you fall for Paul Golding? Even aside from his Russian little jollies. Even aside from all of that. Let's just say, no, there was no Russian jollies. I mean, the guy's just thick as a box of rocks, isn't he? Anyway, he has... For years he's been going off to Russia. I mean, this has got quotes here. During his second trip to Russia, Golding emailed his supporters and told them he hoped to build, quote, practical plans of cooperation, friendship, and mutual assistance with members of the Russian Duma, which is their parliament, including setting up, quote, valuable infrastructure and services that are unobtainable to the UK. Then he went off again to Russia, went off for a jolly. Having posted all that, he went off for a jolly, another one, to Moscow to meet members of the Russian Duma and to go to the parliament. And on his way, and he returned to Britain, and then he got done on terror charges for refusing to hand over his phone to the police. Why might that be? And this is customs saying we want to have a look at your phone because we know who you are and we know you've been off to speaking with the Russian parliament and what's in these conversations, what's in these logs. Which again, in terms of talking about fell for it again, you had Mark Collette, as I pointed out in another vid a while back, while he was off stuck in the terminal, and all the terminally online twats of the dissident right were all going, oh my God, look what they're doing to Mark. How could you break a butterfly on a wheel? You know, and not being allowed into Sweden. And what was he doing in the terminal? Tweeting merrily, and well, not tweeting, but he was all over his Telegram. And then he flew back to Britain. This is why Morgoth and all these people, they all promote him. You can't be that stupid, can you, mate? Can you really be that stupid? Because there he is in the terminal, waiting, you know, and he has to return to Britain, and he's got his devices because he's like holding court on them. But no, there's never been a trial like Mark Collett. Has he been done on terror charges for refusing to give up his phone? Are you telling me if your narrative of Mark Collett, the thorn in the British establishment side, the Moriarty of the of the criminal system in Britain, if that narrative is true, then great, let's get his phone. We can go all through it. But nothing's come up in that. So what happened? Did he even... There's two options here. He gave up his telephone and all his devices to be scanned and all, in which case you're all fucked, because you've all got dialogues with him, haven't you, for years. Probably talking about your donations and all the rest of it. Not that it matters, because as I said before, like, he's connected to it all, so it's all just a fucking, you know, it's a mud child, it's all an operation anyway, but you'll still promote him to all your Mong fans. Get involved in PA. Get involved with everything that he's involved with, all his peripheral stuff. As I say with Morgoth, I think surely you can't be this stupid. You must know that Mark Collett is involved. You must know that, like, you know, he's a better friend than an enemy. Yeah, so, you know, you keep him, oh yeah, I better fucking retweet this, like, I don't want Mark to fucking go off on me, like, oh, he knows where a few fucking bodies are buried, like, he knows where a few Monero accounts are buried, I shouldn't wonder. Well, you know, probably so do MI5, mate, because, you know, he's involved with them, isn't he? I suspect. And if he isn't, then, well, presumably he would have given up his phone. Or is MI5 just sleeping on this? Oh, there he is, the Moriarty. He's finally trapped. He's outside Britain. He must return. We can finally get him. Our time to swoop is now. Like, you idiots. You fucking idiots. Or you're that cynical that you just know what he is, but you're like, shit, I'm in deep now. I've got to keep the charade up, and I've got to keep telling my fans, my low IQ fans, or my mid-wit IQ fans, my neckbeard fans, that are impressed with my noble savage LARP. Oh, yeah, get around Mark, he's a good guy. Well, anyway, Golding, yeah, I mean, you know, I could go on with him, but I mean, the guy's just a clear Putin simp, clearly taking money from them. And he's sniffing around Restore, so as I say again, like, you know, Rupert Lowe, he needs to have just an absolute, you know, Terminator as his press secretary, press officer. Zero tolerance for these people. Zero tolerance. Then maybe can get somewhere. If he starts letting figures like this in, fucking good night Vienna. Okay, and just a tag in at the end. There is an article on Mr. Paul Golding. But trigger warning, it is from Hope Not Hate. I knew you were a fed. Well, you know, if they're going to do all the fucking legwork, I'm not going to go and do my own research. Where are we? Not a fan of Hope Not Hate. Not a fan of what they do. That's why Mr. fucking Potato Head, the Weeble of the North, he has a little cartoon. Which is, I really wrestle with that. Because I would dearly love to use his photo, but this is what you call having, you know, basic integrity and consistency, you know, which are things the dissident right does not hold an invitation to, in all honesty. But still, I'm not going to use a photo of someone who's not volunteered it. Anyway, well, there we go. This fucking page will load. There he is, doing his V's. It's all very Masonic, isn't it? In front of the fucking Duma. Okay, we'll just read this. So, summary. Britain First leader Paul Golding has visited Russia at least 3 times, said he is a, quote, great admirer of President Vladimir Putin. How does he speak? Oh, great admirer of President... I don't actually know how he speaks. Denied Russian involvement in the Salisbury poisonings. Yeah, of course they had nothing to do with it. They were just off visiting a steeple. Defended state persecution of Russian opposition figure Alexei Navalny. Praised Putin and Assad. It's just so fucking Parvini-esque, isn't it? For their actions in Syria. Said, quote, I think Crimea and the Donbass should be part of Russia, you fucking wanker, end quote. He didn't say that last bit. Okay, continues. Since Russia's bloody invasion of Ukraine, many on the far right who had spent years venerating President Putin have suddenly sought to distance themselves the Kremlin. Surely from the Kremlin. Come on. The anti-Muslim group Britain First, for example, has been accentuating the fact that its main Russian links are with an opposition party called the LDP. There is no opposition in Russia. They're all puppets. As the group hurriedly posted on Telegram in February, our friends in Russia are an opposition party. Yeah, these are shit themselves. Fucking arse fell out, didn't they? Because they realised their door would come through. The LDP are a patriotic nationalistic party and not controlled by the FSB, honest. Okay, we'll just continue. The LDPR is often described as part of a controlled opposition or systemic opposition. According to the BBC, the party does not tend to criticise either Mr. Putin or Mr. Medvedev explicitly. Like, you know, you don't need to bother with this. It's fucking obvious. Paul Golding is the co-founder of Britain First and the group's current leader. Formerly a prominent activist in the British National Party, Golding has been imprisoned for religiously aggravated harassment in 2018, then received a suspended sentence for publishing written material intended to stir up hatred, and was convicted under the Terrorism Act in 2020. Well, that was because he didn't dish out his phone, you know, unlike Mr. Collette. In 2019, a recording emerged of his admitting to having violently attacked his former deputy leader, Jada Franson. She's not fucking thick as mince, isn't she? Praising Putin and opening accounts. Hope Not Hate can reveal that Golding has visited Russia at least 3 times on behalf of Britain First. Just the one for Mark Collette, but he was allowed straight back into the country. How could that slip through their fingers again? The earliest 2 trips came in 2019, first in June and again in October, with a 3rd trip a year later in October 2020. The first trip, in the summer of 2019, saw Golding, accompanied by Sam Cochrane and Andrew Edge, attend a gathering of far-right figures from around the world. The International Conference of Peace-Loving Forces, so Orwellian, was organised by the LDPR, aka the FSB, and was attended by extreme figures such as Bartosz Bekir of Falanga in Poland, Tossa, Karl Richter and Florian Stein from the neo-Nazi German National Democratic Party. That's not Fedi, is it? And Kimura Machoi from Isoko in Japan. I don't know who that is. Golding gave a short speech to the gathering in which he made his thoughts on Putin very clear. I'm a great admirer of President Vladimir Putin and what he has achieved for your sacred motherland. I applaud President Putin for condemning Western liberalism at the G20 summit last week. End quote. I have no idea. I think he kind of talks a bit like that. He also criticised how the West subjects Russia and President Putin to an avalanche of lies, distortions and economic pressure to turn Western populations against Russia, which is our natural ally. When has Russia been our natural ally? When? Seriously, it's just like, he's got an IQ of a fucking potato. I mean, I know he's not telling the truth, but still. The propaganda war against President Putin and Russia is the same diabolical pressure that our movement, Britain First, great movement, and many others have been subjected to. Smear campaigns, character assassination, false criminal charges, media lies and poison. These are the weapons the globalists use against our sacred and noble cause. End quote. What a twat. Golding then finished his speech by once again praising and applauding the patriotism of the Russian people and your President Vladimir Putin, as well as using the trip to network with other far-right extremists and FSB operatives, and to heap praise on Putin. It is alleged that Golding used it to deposit huge sums of money in Russian bank accounts. Oh, that's interesting. According to the Sunday World newspaper, quote, Golding has reportedly deposited over £100,000 in Russian bank accounts, end quote. When asked for a comment, Golding replied, "Good grief, we wish we had money stashed away in Russian accounts," end quote. Similarly, even whatever, you know what I mean. The New York Times spoke to a source who claimed to have had dinner with Golding and fellow far-right extremist Stephen Yaxley Lennon, who apparently, you may be surprised, also operates under the name Tommy Robinson, during which they discussed how to move money to Russia. NYT, as New York Times source, claimed that Golding had already opened accounts. They're linked to his far-right group. Return to Moscow. Later in 2019, Golding returned to Moscow, this time with his partner Ashley Simon. Simon, eh? Simon. Ashley Simon, oh no. And Britain First Communication Officer Tim Burton. The trip was written up by Burton in a punishingly detailed diary that has decidedly creepy sections where he talks at lengths of his attraction to Russian women and claims that Simon has a sylph-like figure that would be the envy of many a catwalk model. I mean, that's a bit weird if you're talking about your mate's bird. Fucking creepy bastards, aren't they? Imagine writing that about your mate's bird. She has a sylph-like figure that would be the envy of many a catwalk model. Okay, Tim. While in Moscow, they met with Edward Chesnakov from the Komsomolskaya Pravda newspaper. There's no Pravda there. Pravda means truth. Who subsequently set up a TV interview for Golding on the state-owned news channel Russia 24. Golding hit all of the usual talking points, praising the freedom and openness of Russia while condemning Britain's supposedly totalitarian police state, multiculturalism and political correctness. Freedom and openness of Russia. I mean, you know, if you just want to go and cuck somewhere and you're happy to cuck, like the dissident right, this is what I say, like, just fuck off there. Go on. You be in your element. Just cuck. You know, whatever. Keep your head down, you'd probably be all right. I mean, you know, there's less, well, I say there's less multiculturalism. That's not actually true. Oh, I'll have to have a rain check on this. Hang on. Okay, continue. The main purpose of their trip was supposedly to meet again with the LDPR, aka FSB, who provided them with a tour around the Duma, oh that's nice, before welcoming them at their office on Basmany Lane, okay, fair enough, where they discussed how, quote, we in Britain First could work together with the LDPR. It was agreed that we should keep in touch, meet regularly, and explore ideas leading to mutual cooperation, end quote. Golding then handed the LDPR representative signed copies of his own book. Oh, fucking hell. Lucky old LDPR, aka FSB. It was on their return from this trip that Golding was arrested and questioned by SO15 counter-terrorism police at Heathrow Airport. Unlike Mark Collette, who just slips through their fingers every time. He was charged and subsequently convicted of an offence under the Terrorism Act after he refused to provide the police with access to his digital devices. Why? Why might that be? I don't know. I have no idea. Impossible, wouldn't it, to guess. Interestingly, though, Burton's diary of the trip states that the police asked, quote, were there any financial transactions carried out involving Britain First finances? End quote, suggesting that the police were seeking to find out more about widespread rumours of Golding's hidden Russian money. Mysterious third trip. Of all Golding's trips to Russia, we know the least about his third in 2020. As with his previous visits, he placed a Britain First poppy on the tomb of the unknown soldier at the Kremlin, glorious Red Army, this time accompanied by their Southeast Region advisor, Jeff Miles. Golding also did a series of media interviews. In one broadcast interview, he parroted the same line on previous trips. He called for greater Anglo-Russian cooperation and argued that the reason for Western sanctions against Russia is that it is, quote, a proud traditional country, that kind of thing. They don't like it in the Western world. So they're constantly trying to portray Russia as some kind of violent dictatorship that's a threat to Europe and the West, which it is not. We are kindred peoples. Fucking hell. What a twat. No, it's not at all some kind of violent dictatorship that's a threat to Europe and the West, is it? No, Paul. Okay. However, in another interview with the federal news agency, Golding revealed just how far he was willing to go to defend Putin and the crimes of the Russian state. When asked about the poisoning of Sergei Skripal in Salisbury and the Russian opposition figure Alexei Navalny in Russia, Golding responded, "Every time something happens in the UK, they blame Russia. Whenever there is a power cut in the UK, they blame Russia. They blame Russia for everything." Right, okay. So they didn't, it's just, I'm not even going to bother. Oh dear. Later, in January 2021, Britain first posted, but later deleted, "Hi, Endeavour here," a message on its Telegram channel reading, quote, "Russian opposition Alexei Navalny has been detained by police. However, the British and American mainstream media fails to acknowledge he has been detained for breaching the terms of his probation from a previous criminal case and are instead using it as a chance to attack Putin." End quote. Okay. However, Golding's denial of Russian involvement in the Skripal poisoning actually says, you fucking proofread these, and defence of state persecution of Navalny is just part of his wider pro-Putin propagandizing. Just weeks before the Moscow trip in 2020, but years after the horrifying chemical attacks in Syria in 2018, Britain first posted on Telegram, quote, "God bless Syria and Russia. Assad and Putin have stood for hundreds of thousands of persecuted people in Syria at the hands of the Islamic State." End quote. However, most damaging for Golding in light of the current war is what he said during the FNA, Federal News Agency, interview when asked about the situation in Ukraine in 2020 prior to the current Russian invasion. Quote, "I think that throughout the last hundreds of years, a lot of artificial borders have been made around Europe, and one of those artificial borders was to include the Donbass region," you fucking prick, "the Donbass region, which is populated by ethnic and cultural Russians." Yet when did that begin? Sometime after the Holodomor, you spastic. "Historically, as well as the Crimea, and I don't see why the Ukraine is holding on to areas that are populated with Russians so determinedly." Because it's part of Ukraine, and they're not Russian, they just happen to speak Russian in some places, as they did in fucking Kiev until very recently, broadly. So places like the Crimea, places like the Donbass, they are populated by Russian people. It should be part of Russia. You know. Interestingly, at roughly the same time as the article, in October 2020, Britain First Telegram channel shared an article, quote, "Time to defund NATO." Sounds like the sort of thing Morgoth pushes. Connection there, isn't there? "Defending the West from Russia is so last century." That's the sort of thing Millennial Woes would say. Oh, God, it's so last century. Cringe. I mean, this is all, this is all grist from the same mill, if that even works as an analogy. They're all cut from the same cloth. That would work better. But anyway, okay, final paragraph. "Far from Britain First's claims to have only really been involved with an opposition group in Russia, it is clear that Golding's links to the country are deep, as is his commitment to spreading Kremlin lies and misinformation. The question is, why? Well, as I say, time to defund NATO. Defending the West from Russia is so last century. I mean, this you basically... You're getting a sort of Daily Mirror version of the dissident right, aren't you? Question is, why? Well, it's not hard, is it? Same reason that Paul Golding goes to Russia 3 times. Russian money.